Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And back with me, Gayatri.
John McTernan is part of the 45. Sorry, I missed a decimal point there. The 4.5, the percentage of Labour members who voted for the Blairite candidate Liz Kendall in the Labour leadership election.
Before that, he ran the Scottish Labour general election campaign, in which all but one of the MPs were lost. And before that, he was the spin doctor for Prime Minister Tony Blair, whirling like a dervish in Downing Street and Westminster.
Now, you must think I hate him, but I don't. He has an acute political mind. Losing Scotland was not his fault, and Liz Kendall at least had the courage of her convictions. McTernan has courage too, otherwise he wouldn't be now on board the Sputnik. John, thanks for joining us. I've got to ask, as bluntly as I can, tell us what you really think of Jeremy Corbyn.
What was interesting about this week at conference is that Jeremy pitched himself as an idealist, a new type of politics, a new way of engaging with the country, and he says that's how they're going to do stuff. And obviously I'm a realist. I think we have to engage with the electorate, we have to be more to the centre than he does. And yet on every single decision that he took, he moved straight to the centre. So on Monday, John McDonnell goes, we've got to live within our means. And yet Liz Kendall was abused for being a Tory in June and July for saying the same thing. And so every time there's an accommodation with my side of the party, I think it kind of undermines the sincerity and the authenticity of what Jeremy's pitching. If he believes what he believes, he should go for it full throttle. And there's something interesting about the fact he's not gone for it full throttle.
But shouldn't you rejoice that the sinner hath repented?
I kind of think there's a difficulty about it, which is that authenticity is authenticity. So Jeremy praised Liz. Very warm words in his conference speech. I think that was actually because he recognised that Liz was the only other person in the election for leader who had an analysis.
I recognise that also myself.
Jeremy has one and Liz has another one. And the thing is, you can either be one or the other. I think Jeremy, when he tries to be like Liz, doesn't seem real to me, but more, it doesn't seem authentic to the voter. And if you're going to pitch to the voter, you've got to kind of go for it and go, actually, I don't believe in austerity politics, fair point. I think we should borrow more money, but you watch the way that he and John McDonnell dance around the issue. Either borrowing is wrong or borrowing is right, and you can't sort of dance around it. Either printing money is right or it's wrong. And I think that's the difficulty for me watching it, is just as a professional, think, well, you should stick with what you believe and you shouldn't try and pretend to be a sort of halfway to Liz Kendall, or you'll end up like Ed Miliband.
Oh, heaven forfend. But it's neither right nor wrong, is it? It's not an abstract question. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to borrow. Depends what you're doing with the money that you borrow. If you're borrowing in order to gamble in a casino, that's madness. If you're borrowing in order to build your family a house or buy books for your children to become better educated, that's good borrowing, no?
No, listen, I mean, I think borrowing is a historic low, so it's so cheap. Governments, centrally and locally, should probably be filling their boots with debt, as long as they borrow for the right things. And the danger is that you borrow just to please people. What you should do is you borrow for things which got a very good return on them.
But isn't John McDonnell playing the Deng Xiaoping role, the most successful Chinese chancellor in history? That I don't care whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. Wasn't this a very pragmatic, quite austere John McDonnell we saw at the Labour conference this week?
If John McDonnell had the same commitment to capitalism that the Chinese Communist Party had, I would welcome him with open arms.
OK, let's move. Let's segue onto the war front, because the conference ended not divided around the austerity agenda and the economic policy, but over nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
You are at the front in Scotland. You know the significance of Trident as an issue in Scotland, and you know how important it is as an article of faith to Jeremy Corbyn. It didn't take long for the media to drill down and get to his inner core, and he could answer the question in no other way than that he would not press the nuclear button. That's created the mother of all instability, shadow cabinet members denouncing him, and more talk of a coup.
Well, I don't think there'll be a coup. There's a few thoughts I've got on that. One of them is the debate is a kind of artificial debate in that there will be a vote next year on renewal of Trident. The Tories have got a majority. They can renew Trident. Labour will have a free vote in it, so therefore 9 out of 10 members of the PLP will vote for it. Jeremy will vote against it, against party policy as it is at the moment, conference policy as it is at the moment. And, you know, the way he runs the cabinet and saying you people are free to say what they want, it's almost like, actually, we shouldn't be asking him what he'd do, because he'd give the right to press the button to Michael Duggar or Tom Watson or somebody in the cabinet who is in favour of the deterrent.
Well, I take that point, but it wouldn't in the end, because the only person who can press the button is the Prime Minister, and if Labour wins, Jeremy will be the Prime Minister.
But if Labour wins and Jeremy's the Prime Minister, he's a member of a nuclear alliance, NATO, which has consistently through its history refused to rule out first use. So it's in a very forward-leaning nuclear alliance, and so some of this is a kind of there's a few threads to be pulled at. Is Jeremy in favour of leaving NATO? I kind of think he isn't. I mean, I know he's got his doubts about what he calls NATO expansion, but he's never questioned NATO itself existing or us being a treaty organisation member. And in the end, we're a part of a nuclear treaty, and to some extent, it's irrelevant whether we have weapons or not. We're a nuclear power whether we have nuclear weapons or not. I personally believe we should continue to have our own independent deterrent, but we're part of a deterrent alliance.
Well, you mentioned you didn't expect a coup. How do you explain the absence of the Blairites at the conference this week?
I saw Liz Kendall, she was there. I saw Tristram Hunt. If you talk about the Blairites in the historic sense, lots of people who were Blairites, I mean, Blair's number 10, aren't in politics anymore actively. I am, and I was there. People like Alistair, he's not in active politics, he wasn't there. In terms of were the Blairites present, in a sense, we don't exist anymore because there is no Blair to be a knight for. He's gone, and the oddity about the Labour Party conference is you would still think that the last Labour leader had been Tony Blair. So when Gordon became leader, he was kind of washed away immediately by Ed Miliband. And Ed Miliband defined themselves against Tony, not against Tony and Gordon or against Gordon. And now Jeremy's defining himself against Blair, as if Gordon and Ed Miliband had never happened.
Well, in a way they didn't. But the Times, which has evolved into the perfect Blairite
it is.
killing machine.
In exile.
I mean, they are there physically, but they're also there spiritually. This very week outlined the mechanism of a coup. The MPs effectively triggering a no-confidence vote, trying to keep Jeremy off the subsequent leadership ballot election that would, of course, tear the party asunder, I would argue, be, in any case, illegal. This, according to the Times, is what's going to be done. Whilst you, reasonable and moderate fellow that I know you to be, you seem to be saying that Jeremy's probably going to go the distance.
So there's lots of kind of fallacies around at the moment, in my view. One of them is people on my side of the party say, oh, look, if Jeremy doesn't do so well in the polls, he'll stand down for the good of the party by 2020. Jeremy and his supporters never thought they'd ever get control of the Labour Party. They're not going to give it up. And to be honest, if I was one of them, I wouldn't either. What's the point of getting power just to give it up and go, oh, look, I'm not that good at it? That's a kind of fallacy. The other is speculation, which is as fact, right? If there was a coup and a plan, I'd have been at the meeting, or at least I've been told about the meeting. There's not been a meeting. There's a very clear mechanism. I could outline it now, but there's no point in outlining it now because who's the candidate? You know, you've got to run somebody against him. You can't imagine. I mean, the people who just got beaten are not going to run again. The only two people who came out of this with dignity, Jeremy and Liz. So is Liz going to run again? Probably not in this cycle. Has Liz strengthened her claim to be a future contender? Of course she has. The question is, for me, not do people talk to the papers about what the plans are. The question is, do they have an alternative political project? Because of all the things that Jeremy's got, he's got a political project. Now, I don't agree with it, but I can't sit here and tell you that there is a new Labour political project that I could set out in 5 points for you. There isn't. There is a crisis of social democracy. Jeremy Corbyn's victory is a symptom of that, not a cause of it. But that crisis is there in Australia, it's there on the left in New Zealand, in Canada, in continental Europe, and some really hard thinking's got to be done. And as there was a comrade at one of the meetings from Egypt, and she just said, why is it there is no international perspective on anything Labour discusses and no feminist perspective? She just sat there and just said, I've come to all these things, and it's like everything shrinks to Britain when you talk. And if we can't think internationally, if we can't think everything through from top to bottom, we don't deserve to be in contention in a leadership campaign. And you can't have a coup without a candidate. You can't have a coup without a project.
There are princes, either across the water or wherever they are. Chuka Umunna being the latter, and David Miliband being the former. Are they, either of them, both of them, are they really out of contention, do you think?
Absolutely.
Both of them?
David's not coming back. Was it Fitzgerald said there's no second acts in American life? I don't think there's a second act in British political life. There really isn't kind of coming back. Once you've gone to the international level like David has, then the next job is further on down that path. It's not. And Chuka, I think you can't launch a leadership campaign and abandon it in 3 days and then expect the next time the thing comes up you're going to be top of the list to get the leadership campaign. It's going to have to be somebody who showed more seriousness. Chuka does not have the right to run rather than Liz, in my view. If you make a case, make a logical case, and you show courage and you show personality and integrity, that gives you a bigger claim on the future than anything else. And for anybody to be in contention for the future leader of the Labour Party, whenever Jeremy Corbyn stands down after 3 terms as Prime Minister, it's got to be somebody who has shown courage, personal integrity, and has got a sense of personal ideology, values, moral, and kind of absolutely clear. And as you know, those people are rarer in politics than they should be.
Well, I hope we're there to see it, John, you and I.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for joining us
No
on
problem.
the Sputnik. After the break, it's the left-wing leader of Britain's Firefighters Union, Matt Wrack of the FBU. Don't miss it. Welcome back to Sputnik. It is a truth universally acknowledged that the Conservatives don't like trade unions very much. The old type of Tory, we might call them the Downton Abbey set, preferred paternalistic relationships with their workers, a kind of noblesse oblige. The Thatcherites took off the velvet gloves to reveal the iron fist therein.
The 1980s and 90s saw big defeats for organised labour and a series of anti-union laws. New Labour under Mr Blair and Mr Brown had no appetite to reverse them. This is one of the reasons why unions like the RMT and the Fire Brigade Union ended up outside Labour. Joining us now to discuss the new wave of Thatcherite anti-union laws and maybe a word or two about Labour's new situation is the General Secretary of the Fire Brigade Union, Matt Wrack. Matt, thanks for coming on the Sputnik. It's public sector unions like you and the RMT, as it happens, that are really in the Tory government's sights now. They want to effectively make it impossible for public sector workers, the only remaining workers by and large who are strongly unionised, can defend their members from doing so.
Yes, I think in the consultation documents, the Fire Brigade Union specifically mentioned some of the disputes, some of the picketing and so on. They specifically mentioned, and it is clearly targeted at public sector unions. Interestingly for us, in terms of this debate about thresholds, we achieve very high thresholds when we've had to ballot for industrial action. But it's clearly an attempt to effectively illegalise strikes across most of the public sector. And once they've done that, they'll come after the rest of us. To me, and the debate I've had with firefighters and other trade unionists is, you've got to ask, why are they doing it at this time? They've just announced that for the public sector, for the next 4 years, another 4-year pay freeze.
This is on top of
the freeze that we've had for the past 5 years. We were expecting the comprehensive spending review with further cuts of between 25% and 40% in public services. So that's going to mean tens of thousands of jobs going. Our pensions are being attacked. it's obvious why they want to stop people resisting. And I think you've got to put the two sides of that together.
Yeah, your in industry and your union, with which I've long been associated for 40 years nearly, used to have a big workforce with fire stations everywhere, where response times were razor sharp, and even your own fire station, the first one you ever served in, has just been closed down. You've been under remorseless attack.
Unprecedented in modern history. It's staggering. 7,000. I mean, it's a small part of the public service, the fire service, but 7,000 jobs almost gone under the last 5 years. Over 40 fire stations closed across the country. Dozens of fire engines axed. So the service that people are getting is not what it was 5 years ago. And by the way, if there are big events like the floods or, for example, a terrorist attack, then in our view, we're less resilient than we were 5 years ago.
So tell us what the new laws and the TUC and Labour, actually, under its new leader, have actually stepped up to the plate to oppose this bill with some gusto. Yeah. What will the bill actually mean? Spell out the details.
I think that the headline thing that people have picked up on is the thresholds. That means that there will be a certain requirement to achieve a yes vote if you call for industrial action. And there's two of those. There's a general one that 50% need to turn out to vote yes. In what are called important public services, which include my own transport, education, you would have to have that, and 40% of the total eligible workforce would have to vote yes. That means that if you achieved threshold 1, so a 50% turnout, you would have to have an 80% yes vote for the strike or industrial action to be lawful. So that, I mean, these are figures that the analogy we've drawn is with politicians. No politician in the UK anywhere achieves anything like that they expect trade unions to achieve.
The other part of the bill doesn't directly affect you, at least not at this moment. Maybe it will, and maybe you'll say something about that. It is also a further attempt to sever the ability of trade unions to spend money democratically agreed by their members on politics.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we have a political fund, and we're required to vote every 10 years. So I think the first point I would make is nobody forces anyone to join a trade union. It's a voluntary organisation. Workers choose to join an organisation.
Biggest voluntary organisation
in the country. 6.5 million of us. And once you join a club, then that club makes its rules. So people have decided to join the Fire Brigade Union, for example. We have decided through our structures to have a political fund. We're required by law to ballot everyone every 10 years. What they're now trying to do is make it more difficult for us to run that fund. Our money, by the way, is not used currently for, as you've hinted at, it isn't used for Labour Party affiliation fees, but much wider political campaigning. So that, again, they're making it harder for unions to defend people industrially and politically.
Now, we know why the Fire Brigade Union ended up outside Labour, even though it was a part of the very foundation of the Labour Party, and the Railway Union, the RMT, actually proposed the motion which set the Labour Party up in the first place, yet both ended up outside the Labour Party, as indeed I did myself. The landscape has now just very drastically changed, or may have, at least has begun drastically to change. That must provoke, amongst unions like the FBU, a discussion about whether to seek re-affiliation again.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable summer, a political earthquake in Britain, where rules invented by the right wing of the Labour Party to stop the left getting any presence have actually completely backfired, and a remarkable campaign by Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters have engaged Labour Party members, trade unionists, and a whole range of new people who haven't been involved in politics before. Huge meetings of 1,000 people in small towns around the country. It's staggering. We disaffiliated, as you say, in 2004. It was a very democratic debate. It was in anger at the way Tony Blair had treated us as an affiliated organisation, simply for daring to demand a pay rise. And the debate's gone on ever since. There is no doubt that that debate is now going on among firefighters and Fire Brigade Union members. I've got no doubt it'll be going on among RMT members as well, the two unions who ended up, as you say, outside of Labour.
And this wave of new members that Labour attracted as a result of the Jeremy Corbyn phenomenon, where hundreds of thousands of new people joined, we understand, is beginning to lead now in the constituencies to phenomenal scenes where hundreds of people turn up for a Labour Party meeting that maybe just 12 months ago would have been attended by a dozen.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things that people have commented on in the past few years is people's disengagement with politics. People don't like politicians who all look the same, sound the same, spout the same policies. And Corbyn has blown that apart and is engaged with a whole layer of people who don't want to see things carrying on as they have done. Now, that's potentially a genuine mass movement, the like of what we've never seen in British, certainly in recent British politics. And I think the challenge for the trade unions, for the left in Britain, is to actually organise that and make sure it carries on.
Well, he even announced recently that if he were to become a PM, that he would set up this Ministry for Employment Rights, which then the obviously right-wing papers coined as a Ministry for Unions.
Yeah, exactly, and I think one of the huge frustrations under the new Labour period in government, and it refers back to the current trade union bill, is that 13 years there was a chance to improve the position of workers in relation to trade union legislation, and they didn't take that opportunity. So Cameron is now starting, not just from where Thatcher left off, but from where Blair and Brown and the coalition left off, and they're able to push forward because of that failure to challenge the trade union laws after 1997. So I think we would welcome that. Why can't we have a proper debate in Britain about what workers' rights should be, and actually the right to organise, the right to join a union, the right to freedom of association, and the right to take industrial action. Those rights should be accepted publicly and in law.
Well, Tony Blair presided over the 10 richest years in British history and 10 years of record parliamentary majorities. So if he had wanted to, the country could both have afforded to, and Parliament would have passed the reversal of these attacks that were made on trade union rights and the rights of working people to defend themselves over the Thatcher period.
Absolutely. And interestingly, the likes of John McDonnell and Corbyn, who were very much marginalised during that period, were arguing for that, and others were arguing for that at the time. And the new Labour leadership refused point blank, and Blair boasted of the fact that Britain had the most restrictive trade union rights in Western Europe. So for trade unionists, for workers, these are about workers' rights. Cameron often now talking about the working people, working families and so on. Working families come together to organise themselves in trade unions. That's what they are. It's not about general secretaries, it's about working people trying to protect themselves in work. And that's a huge debate that is almost ignored in the media, people's life at work nowadays. So I think I welcome the discussion that Jeremy Corbyn has opened around some of these issues, and hope we can see it through.
Last and quickly, Matt, all this talk of police and fire service mergers, where does the union stand on that?
We think it is absolutely crazy. The fire service performs a unique humanitarian an independent role in relation to the 999 services. It's not part of the police, and internationally, generally, it's not treated in the same way. A couple of weeks ago, we had a fire crew attacked in Northern Ireland, seriously attacked. We've spent 40 years in Northern Ireland navigating through very difficult circumstances, because fire crews have to be able to get into communities in all across the divide to do their job without coming under attack, and to do that they have to be seen to be neutral. So this is a real threat to us, and we will be fighting it as hard as we can to allow. We want to be able to engage with communities whoever they are, wherever they are, and we're not the police. We're not there to do police enforcement roles. We're not there to be at protests. We're there to render a unique humanitarian service. So that's the essential, the background to why we'll be opposing those proposals.
Well said. Good luck with it. Matt Wrack of the Fire Brigade Union. Thanks for joining us on the Sputnik.
Alas,
Alas, that's all we've got time for. It's the end of the show.
But you can stay in touch with us on Twitter at RT_Sputnik or on Facebook, Sputnik on Russia Today. It's goodbye from me, Gayatri.
And from me, George Galloway. It's been marvellous.